The final thing I'll say, then we'll stop and take questions, is about social issues. We'll talk about the third surprise. One of the big, and this is probably the most interesting and poignant of the findings from the brain, we've always thought that pain was primary. You know, there's a pain circuit in the brain, and if you drop a brick on your foot, you'll yell an expletive, and it will hurt, and it will really take your attention. And we've always thought that there was a pain circuit in the brain, and that pain circuit was just for physical pain. Well, it turns out that social issues have kind of recycled or hijacked that primary threat circuitry. Pain is a primary threat. Primary threat means danger to life. Stop and pay attention. The social situations have hijacked the primary threat circuitry, and actually we feel much more intensely, much more strongly about social situations than anyone realized. Has anyone read John Cassiopo's work? He's got a book called Loneliness. It was a big kind of aha for me when I interviewed him and worked with him a little. His book basically says that social support, like the feeling of being connected to other people, is a primary reward or primary threat. And that loneliness, this feeling of sort of sadness and whatever inside, is actually your brain's response to danger. It's your brain saying, I'm really in trouble here. This is dangerous. I don't have people around me I can go to. And the pain that you feel turns out to be very, very similar to hunger. It activates almost the same kind of cortisol response as hunger. And they tested this with people experiencing social pain. They actually did a study of people experiencing social pain. They gave some a placebo and some Tylenol. And they found that the people with Tylenol were significantly better off than the people on the placebo, those experiencing social pain. And so one of the sort of unexpected findings from the brain research is literally that our brain is attuned to social issues much, much more than we expected. And last year, I sort of call it the year of the social study. There's so many exciting studies came out last year that sort of explained the deeply social brain. One study was a meta-analysis of people's best and worst moments and found that all of them were social. Most of them were social. So our best and worst moments in life are not personal, they're social. Another study showed that collective intelligence is more social than IQ-based. So if we got you into teams and got you to compete on a task, the group that had the highest social intelligence would be most likely to win, not the group with the highest IQ. That's pretty important. Doesn't that keep you in a day job, keep you busy as an OD practitioner? Another interesting one, if you want to live longer, get some friends. And my two favorites are positive social traits trump bad health habits. In other words, just think about what that means. In other words, if you smoke and drink and don't exercise and have all these other bad habits but have really good social support and a great network of friends, you're going to live longer than someone who's really, really healthy and doesn't have friends. Don't shoot the messenger and don't take it as a prescription. I know I'm a doctor, but not that kind. So, but it's very interesting. The study was, literally positive social traits trump bad health habits. And my favorite, the final one, is that heavy drinkers outlive non-drinkers. And in the interest of full disclosure, I want to let you know that light drinkers outlive heavy drinkers. Before you make the leap to, you should take up a really bad habit. The whole night's suddenly worth it, isn't it, just for that? Heavy drinkers outlive non-drinkers, and the hypothesis is, they're trying to work this out, but the study did find this. The hypothesis is that heavy drinkers have far more social connections, and non-drinkers have far less social connections and much more isolated. So the social turns out to be very, very important. I drew this together into a model. Who knows about the SCARF model? Just going to see a show of hands. Who's read about SCARF? So, okay, only about 20%. So I pulled this together into a framework in 2009. It came out in Your Brain at Work. And it's a summary of the 5 social domains that turn out to be primary threats or primary rewards for the brain. And each one of these is either a strong threat, the threat's stronger. Each one of these is either a strong threat or a mild reward. And these are playing out all the time. We all seem to have very individual differences. Excuse me. We all seem to have quite individual differences. So for one person, certainty might be really important. Someone else, it might be fairness. But we all seem to have these to different degrees inside all of us. Each of them are primary threats and rewards, independent of any other reward. So you can feel, your ventral striatum, which involves the reward center. If you feel physical pleasure, your ventral striatum will light up, and if someone says "good job" to you in a computer voice, even your ventral striatum lights up. And literally, these are the same as physical pleasure or physical pain. So when someone says to you, "Can I give you some feedback?" That horrible feeling. That's your body reacting to a potential status threat, and the way it tags a status threat is as a real danger to your life. And it's actually pretty accurate, because higher status does make you live longer, controlling for all other variables, including income and education. Higher status does actually make you live longer. Status, relative to people around you, gives you more dopamine and other things. So status, certainty, autonomy, which is a feeling of choice, relatedness, which is a feeling of being in a connected state with someone, versus treating people as a danger, as an enemy. So it's having people that you class as in your in-group versus people in your out-group, and they study this in all sorts of interesting ways. And fairness in and of itself is a reward. So these 5 domains turn out to be the neuroscience, very likely, we can't say for sure, but very likely to be the key drivers of engagement. So when people are engaged, it's not because of the money, it's because of the meaning, and these meanings that we make about our work usually come back to one of these. There may be other, I'm sure there are other primary rewards and threats, but these appear to be very, very strong, very intense rewards and threats. Now, an organizational change, guess what an organizational change does? An organizational change comes along and makes people look bad, tells people they've been doing something wrong, and tells people they're going to have to go back to the beginning and learn something new. Does anyone like that? Not really very much at all. But we don't predict just how intense that response is. But we react as if our life's in danger. Organizational change makes certainty go down in a big way. A change reduces autonomy. People often don't have a choice. They're not involved in the decision. It can impact relatedness, and it's often done unfairly. Now, you can't maximize all these. If you provide a huge amount of certainty, then you're going to reduce autonomy. So this isn't a sort of move all the slides up at once. It's a dynamic framework for recognizing a situation and how you're creating threats and how you might offset the threats. So I'll send the paper out on this. There's a paper called Managing with the Brain in Mind that came out a couple of years ago. I'll send that out also if you drop your card. I think there's a bucket or a bowl or something back there they've organized. And I'll send out the paper on the SCARF model in more detail. But this has been one of the really helpful ways of thinking about engagement in particular and change. Because people in a threat state, especially a strong threat state where you've got a few of these hit, people in a threat state, they can't think about a change. They can't think your thoughts. In fact, if people class you as a foe, they don't really listen to you at all. When people class you as a foe, they listen to words using the lateral regions of the brain. They don't actually picture what you're saying. Very conceptual, very kind of separate. So it's very easy to, for leaders especially, to create threats. In fact, leadership is inherently kind of threat creating on all 5. Leaders kind of accidentally create threats in all 5 domains because they have higher status, they're creating uncertainty, they have the say. They're often not trusting people, and they're seen as unfair because they do, less work for more money. And so, leaders inherently can create a threat response in others just by their very being. And they're the people trying to create change and create more noise. So understanding this and working with this, there's a thing called the offsetting principle where you might not be able to move all of them, but maybe there's one of these you can change. Maybe in your organization you can just increase the sense of autonomy by letting people in on the game and letting people understand the process and make some choices. That can go a long way to offsetting the threats overall.